All right, thank you very much. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm going to now speak for 10 minutes or so on international basins, some of the issues that are affecting water globally, some of the reasons, some of the issues associated with that, and how CSIRO, my organisation, is working towards enabling outcomes at that level. Right, well, first of all, a quick scan of the issue, and this is information from a United Nations report, which effectively is a global scan of water scarcity. And what it shows is that about 1.8 billion people at present are actually under some form of water scarcity or stress, and that about another 1.8 billion people are under the influence of what's called economic water stress, which means that there actually isn't the available infrastructure to provide water in order to underpin their daily tasks. And the other thing about this slide is that in another 10 years' time, if climate change rolls out in the way we expect to do, about half of the world's population will be affected by water scarcity and water stress. So what does this mean? Well, obviously there's been a significant sort of financial response in terms of the issues. And again, just going through some of the numbers to get through a sense of the order of magnitude issue here, is that for the OECD countries over this decade, they're putting in about $1 trillion worth of investment in water-related infrastructure. For developing economies, they're in the order of about $100 billion over a 5-year period in order to underpin basic services such as sanitation and wastewater treatment. The World Bank Group have committed, up till recently, about $100 billion to help developing economies underpin their infrastructure. Now, even though some of these numbers can be updated, obviously, the important point to take is that the numbers are very large. And they're actually large enough to actually influence the economies of nations and the global economy. And you can see from this slide here is that there can actually be significant drag or weight in terms of responding to these water scarcity issues on the global economy. And again, you can see the diagram on the left anyway, what the potential drag on the net GDP from various nations will be as you go forward if we don't actually, or as climate change starts to bite, water scarcity starts to become an issue. All right, so we're talking about international basins, and why is the concept of a basin important? Well, it's for a number of reasons, and in no particular order, is that a basin is actually an appropriate scale, physical scale and social scale, to assess water, land and energy management issues. So ultimately, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So it's also an appropriate scale that is connected to regional policy and decision making. So often the agencies and the ministries and the authorities that are actually have oversight of control of policy and so forth actually work at that regional to national scale. It's not at the local scale, it's not at the farm scale, it's not at the city scale, it's actually at a whole of large basin scale. A basin actually also gives you a physical basis in hydrology. So clearly basins, watersheds, catchments, they're actually a bounded hydrological unit. And it actually gives you a closed system or a known system in which you can actually scale up and add measurements of other things that matter. So you can get your water balance right, you can then add irrigation, you can add agriculture, you can add economics off that, you can add environmental flows, regional economic and sort of social and livelihood outcomes, all come off the back of the basin scale assessment. Basins, it's also an international concept with a language, as I said, around basins, catchments, watersheds. It's an international concept that actually speaks to a cohort across continents and across nations. So it's a language that's familiar, and that's important because it also means that learnings and understandings can be transferable across other basin systems. All right, so why is CSIRO involved? Well, it's for a number of reasons. Our organisation is mostly is our prime measure of outcome, if you like, is actually through impact. We have to demonstrate that what we do actually matters and is actually generated in a result of genuine change in an outcome. So clearly, if we can actually enable nations to improve their water management decisions, thus improve livelihoods, then that's actually a significant outcome for our organisation. Also, the science is interesting. The basins are large, complex systems. There's multiple stakeholders, multiple disciplines. You know, the problem space goes up and down across scales and dimensions, and that is the space where our organisation actually has its does its most work. We're actually at that large multi-dimensional scale, so it's a good problem space for us. And the other thing is around regional relations that we actually get to help Australia. Here we are in the Australian Water Partnership stand. So CSIRO is a good citizen of the Australian Water Partnership, and with our fellow partners, we can actually help the Australian nation help our neighbours in the region. So how can science actually support basin outcomes? Well, here's just a bit of an example given here. So one of the ways we can do it is by actually understanding the basin water and land resources. What's the available surface water and groundwater resources within the basin? What is the potential land resource within the basin, and how much of that is suitable for irrigation? On top of that, you can ask questions around, well, science can help you in terms of asking questions around improving productivity for maximum benefit. What irrigation systems in place? Can the system efficiency be improved? Can irrigation be expanded? What are the benefits and the trade-offs and the constraints? All of those can be put into a repeatable system. And then you can also look ahead and ask yourself around strategic investments for improved water use. How can your existing infrastructure investment be used to maximise benefits? Can new infrastructure can be created and be developed? And again, what are the benefits and the trade-offs there around doing so? So science can also be used to help and support cooperation across stakeholders and basins. And the basin modelling framework, once you have an agreed baseline for a system, and it's a repeatable framework, you can then run a conversation with the relevant stakeholders in the basin around looking at possible future states of the basin. So you can look at policies around population change, what happens with climate change, and how does that actually affect the different stakeholders in the basin. You can actually look at it to say, well, what happens if we want to put a new dam into the system? How do we look at the trade-offs for, if it's a hydropower dam, the energy benefits off to one stakeholder? How to ensure that there might be some flood mitigation benefits? How to ensure that we've still got an irrigation benefit for other stakeholders, and that the environment has still got enough a sustainable level of use? So all those questions can be assessed in a conceptual sense through a repeatable modelling base. You can support various options for risk and flood management, and also you can be used as a way of reducing conflict in basins by having a mature evidence-based conversation with your stakeholders. So with an upstream riparian state, you can have a conversation with a downstream riparian state around infrastructure development and around flood mitigation controls, etc. And it all works off having a common and agreed point of truth. And this is my final slide here, which is just some of the basins that we're working in throughout South Asia, and just some of the problem spaces that we're working in. So in the CSIRO Basin, we're building a river system model to explore sort of different options around hydropower development, environmental flows and the trade-offs between flood mitigation and sediment management. In the Brahmani Basin in eastern India, we've brought a water sharing model to help the 3 basin states understand the possible options for their future development. In the Indus Basin, we're working with relevant agencies there to build a basin planning model to help them undertake their water resource sharing within the states, within Pakistan, and also help them understand the mechanics of some of their obligations around the Indus Water Treaty. We're also doing work in the Brahmaputra around improvements for surface water and groundwater management to try and enable them through the flood drought cycle that's working there. So that's a quick 10-minute journey throughout international basins. Please join us at our CSIRO stand just around the corner. It'll be a pleasure to have a further conversation with you. Okay, thank you.